Understood. And I suppose being a recruiter, I'm seeing a lot of this sort of technology start, to sort of hit the recruitment world a bit. Have you, for example, I'm seeing some chatbots around and some of the vendors are pushing this sort of technology on us at the moment. What have you seen in that space? A very selfish question, this one. The recruitment industry, what are you seeing people doing in that space with emerging tech?
Even recruiters are able to be innovative too. Actually, I have heard of one of our clients is using a major telco is using some software to as part of their recruitment process to screen candidates. So it's a video screening product which performs an interview with the candidate through an avatar, I guess you would say.
Sure,
and the avatar asks certain questions to the candidate who is filmed, and in the background there's a machine learning algorithm which actually looks at the facial expressions that the candidate is having as they answer the questions, right? So are they moving their eyes to the right or to the left? Are they looking down? Are they confident when they speak? What kind of inflections are in their voice?
You've got me really self-conscious now on camera here.
Well, this is it, right? Like, so there's a whole set of ethical questions here around the interpretations that have been made based on gender, based on race, based on the setting that the candidate may be in, that may be incorrectly achieved. And so, one of the conversations we're having with this client is, well, what's the ethical framework you've considered around this? What might be the negative outcomes of using this type of software, the unintended outcomes that you potentially haven't thought about? Because everyone can see the efficiency in automating those screening applications and potentially the higher screening outcomes you might get by considering some of these factors, but there are also some unintended consequences that could lead to biases and bigotry, and everyone hiring kind of alpha confident males. Like we've seen, cases come out of the US where I think in the legal system over there, they were using to screen parole applications from inmates in one of the states, and over many years, this algorithm was used to screen the applications, and they found out it was making racial biases. Incarcerating people for a longer time purely based on their race. So these things are serious, and I sorry to use a negative example in the recruitment space, but I think in time companies will need to think through, if they're adopting this technology, not just considering the productivity upsides, but how do you manage the downside risk? And we've actually been doing some work with this CSIRO and Dr. Alan Finkel around the concept we're calling ethical AI. And at the moment, this is very much a framework. It's a governance framework around when you're implementing AI systems to think through, the ethical considerations that need to be accommodated. But I think in time we'll have actually programs and auditing techniques, and there'll be more of a requirement to disclose, how you've actually tested these systems, negatively tested these systems, to make sure there's no unintended issues.
And you're right. And what's actually happening there, I think, is the bias that already is existing in humans. We're really just, in these sort of examples, just translating to the computer, right? I was listening to the Melinda Gates audiobook. I forget what it's called now, but I think it's The Moment of Lift, actually. But yeah, she makes this great point about her Microsoft days and or even after her Microsoft days, where the Windows 10 Hello feature, which is the feature that allows you to do a 3D scan of your face when booting Windows, so you can log in, with your facial recognition. Well, that was, she said, 30% less accurate, I think it was, on black men, or or particularly other races other than white young white males, typically based on the fact that their programmers were mainly young white males, and so they were using their own faces to do all that testing, and they wrote the whole whole algorithm with that in mind, and therefore that's what came through. So initial versions of it were very poor at facial recognition, on anything other than what effectively were the programmers' profiles.
And I think Silicon Valley obviously hasn't learned its lesson, because I know with my own Google Home device, it picks up my voice much better than my wife's voice. As a female. And I've read some stuff about that as well, that the training data that was used for that had there was a larger training set of white Caucasian males. So I mean, these things are in some respects unintended, but as you say, they kind of pick up on and really escalate or amplify some of the biases that are already there.
And on the other hand, when used properly, they really can help with bias, because one of the big biases in recruitment, of course, is when you're reading 200 resumes, and there's a lot of names in there that are, from other countries, difficult to pronounce or say or whatever. And when you've got all that personal information in the CV around the name, the ethnicity, and the age, particularly as well, if the age is there, or you can tell their age from their, the length of time they've been in business, or they've been in the workforce, or they've got their date of birth on their resume, then that can bring in a whole lot of human bias as well. Some of the recruitment systems now are actually deliberately taking that information out and hiding it, and making the process a bit more generic in terms of the data that's provided for exactly that cause, to take away that human bias of what could be favouring people that are much like the people that are reading the CVs, which is a common, obviously, human bias. So it's interesting. The technology could help, but it doesn't help if we're just programming it with the same bias that exists already.
I think what it shows around technology in general is it's never just about the programming. It's never just about the architecture. There's a range of factors that need to be considered when a company is implementing this stuff, but both internally and where it's external, customer facing. And it's why, a big part of what I spend my time talking to clients about is, something we're calling digital trust, right? Which is how do you actually get organizational trust, society trust, governmental trust in using emerging technology, when, we've all got examples today, Cambridge Analytica, data breaches, the way in which there's an unprecedented attack on our personal information. All of these things can place an inherent distrust, I think, in a lot of people's minds about, particularly if you're outside of the technology industry, about companies' intentions and the downside risk of tech. And so, more than ever, it's critical that it's really a whole of organization approach to really considering how to commercialize and go after opportunities with technology, because it's a whole of organization effort, from legal and compliance and regulatory to ethics to audit and everything in between that needs to be considered.
So how do you do that? I mean, whole of organization is fine, but how do you build that digital trust? Is it a top-down approach, or where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, it's you start early, I think, is the answer. It's very hard building for trust at the end of the project, and unfortunately, I think a lot of companies kind of get to this point in the project once they have an MVP, or perhaps they've even one step away from a production system, and within the process they're going through some testing, and as part of that testing they're considering some of perhaps engaging their internal auditors, or perhaps they're going out to compliance, just right prior to launching to market to check, from a risk perspective, whether there's any concerns. And unfortunately, a lot of time, take something like privacy, if there's privacy concerns, it may require a whole re-architecting of the system, or a whole new consideration of how data is going to be managed and can be handled. So I think really having the conversation early in the product life cycle, so that these things can be tabled and you can get that consultation from across those different groups is key. Just to avoid regret, but because obviously, as we all know, changing something earlier in the life cycle is much easier than once it's built.
Totally, yeah. And I think there's probably an initial thought that might be, well, look, if I can just get that MVP, that minimum, viable product, up and running, then I'll be able to show them that there's no problems with it, and it's, it all works well, and there's little risk, etc. But like you say, that's probably almost too late as well. It's got to be started a lot even before then.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit chicken and the egg. Oftentimes with these projects, we have a lot of clients who, from a commercial division or within the strategy division, are going after disruptive ideas using, emerging technology like blockchain, or differentiated product offerings that use combinations of blockchain, AI, and space tech. And I mean, they're big ideas, and they have risk inherently. They have risk related to them. And oftentimes, those teams are quite careful about involving auditors or compliance people or risk people, because the default is to shut it down, right? It's too risky. And so there is that timing thing of having a credible business case, having a credible commercial case that can be stood behind before something has rocks thrown at it. So I get that, and it's I don't think there's a hard and fast rule around exactly when, but I think certainly leaving it until right before market launch or is too late.
Yeah.